And hi, everybody. Welcome to FSU Coach Live. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Tim Bankhurst, joined with a special guest, Chris Yates. Chris is a sports broadcaster, a sport media personality. Chris, thanks so much for joining me. I wonder if you would just start out by telling us a little bit about who you are and how you got into the business.
Absolutely. I started at University of Texas, Longhorns, hook 'em horns, hook 'em, and I was a broadcast journalist major, and then graduated in '91. Got my first job, and I always tell kids, they always say, "How do you get into TV?" Well, it's a little bit trickier now, but back then, and it's still very similar. You just got to get in the door. You got to do anything. So I basically was a videographer for the news department. And so I would go and do stories for news. But then at night, I would practice on the set sportscasting because that's what I really wanted to do. And then that got me my demo reel. And then I would send that out to smaller, you got to start in small towns. I'm talking market 200. So I went down to Laredo, Texas, market 200. Market. So, and just got my feet wet. And basically, in smaller markets, you're the video guy, you're the editor, you're the reporter, you're the anchor. It's a one-person department. You're everything. You have no help. So you get good at everything. Well, I think that's very important. You've got to learn every aspect of reporting because if you can't edit, you're not going to be able to be in TV. Like most reporters edit their own stories. So I did that. And then eventually, to make this quick, I went to San Antonio, Lubbock, and then got laid off in Lubbock because I criticized one of the basketball coaches. But I was doing, yes, and I was doing my job. The problem was we sponsored her basketball show, and it's a small town, and they did not like that. She complained to the station, and they said, "Hey, yeah, we're gonna have to let this guy go." And I was like, "Come on," and they did because they sponsored the show, which, I stuck with my ethics as a journalist. You stick with your ethics. You just told the truth. And then I ended up in Dallas, top 5 market in the nation. So it worked out really well. And then I worked there from 95 to 2008. And I did everything, once again, producer, editor, reporter, anchor. And those were great times because the Cowboys were actually winning Super Bowls back then. So I would cover Super Bowls. I went to the World Series, Stanley Cup Finals. But really, to be honest, it's not just about the big events as a sports reporter. It's the human interest stories. I always tell people, tell great stories. Don't just tell the score. Find an interesting story of a player on a team or an interesting person doing something in the community. And it doesn't have to be a professional athlete. I did a lot of high school stories on kids that were doing great things in the community or overcame cancer and played a game or things like that. So human interest stories are where you're going to make your living. I became known as Mopra, the male version of Oprah, because I got people to open up. I really learned how to interview people, and that was my passion, is telling stories. I know I'm long-winded here, but last thing is I left TV and I got into social media. Still did a lot of college football, did some NASCAR, and then did some corporate videos. But all my stuff now lives on YouTube. And I've helped brands and agencies and business owners create YouTube videos. And, we've gotten over 1.3 million views on YouTube.
So you're kind of supporting sports organizations now with kind of best practices and providing them with content when they can't necessarily do it. Is that right?
Not necessarily. Good question, but it's more like Budweiser would come to me. Hey, we want some cool content. What can you come up with? So I came up with Bud Light Ultimate Tailgate, and we traveled around the country interviewing fans who has the best tailgate setup, and they obviously had to have Bud Light with them. Or another one was Maui Jim sunglasses. They were doing the rock and roll marathons. How can we make that more interactive? Well, I would go do videos on the runners and tell their stories, and then at the end of the day, we would edit them up on a screen by the Maui Jim sunglasses, so it attracted people to come check out those sunglasses with the stories playing. So I was always trying to just tell stories, but I was telling them for the brands around sports. It's basically like, they sponsor sporting events. Why not sponsor content?
Mm-hmm. One of the challenges, I think, for a lot of coaches and even just sports organizations is getting their message out, right?
Yep.
Sharing their mission and who they are and trying to use that as a platform to sell tickets, recruit athletes, all these kinds of things. Based on your experiences, are there specific strategies that we can use in order to kind of increase our social media presence?
Absolutely. You got to think, who's your end user? Who are you trying to reach? So if it's recruiters, well, what do you want to let recruiters see you do? Maybe you do training videos on how you guys train. Maybe it's one I really like that I think every coach should be doing, and I'm shocked that they don't. Is I used to break down film for Cowboys coaches on pregame shows. I think they should break down some cool plays of last year. Here's why this play worked. X, Y, Z. Show your knowledge in how you think and how you coach and how you your strategy on and that's a football example. Basketball. Here's how we pick and roll. And break down film on a live chat. That would be another good one. I think training videos. I think getting to meet some of the current athletes. Get them on, ask them questions. Hey, why did you pick FSU? What did you like about it? Oh, and then let them talk. Let recruits see what the other athletes are thinking about that. And maybe even sometimes you get a teacher on. Hey, at FSU, we teach this, and it's not just about athletics, but you're coming here for an education. So I think every element that the school wants to show, do that content.
The challenge though is the work involved. And
Right.
and I don't think, I mean, I'm doing these, for example, and interviewing guests, and people don't realize how much time it takes to set it up, to prepare, to invite the guests, to do the logos and all these things. There's a cost benefit in all of this. And in your opinion, I'm assuming you're going to say, yeah, there's definitely a benefit. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the field that you're in today. When somebody comes in like a coach who just says, I've got 90 things to do, I just don't have time to do this today. Are there any specific strategies where, okay, I don't have a lot of time, I should do this thing once a day or once every couple of days, and that will help?
I think even just once a week. Coaches, like you said, are extremely busy, but maybe get someone with my background or someone similar to me that can, so they don't have to do it on their own. Everything's set up. Everything's already scheduled. All they do is show up, they're on for 10 minutes and they're out. I think if you make it easier on the coaches, think about it. Coaches have press conferences every day, but it's already set up. And they just do it because they know that they have to get their word out there. Well, but they need to control their own message. They need to go directly to the fans and not have the media dictate what they're saying and determine what they're saying. That's why, like, the Players Tribune has done so well. The Athletic, it's players going directly to their fans, and I think that's exactly what coaches need to be doing. But have someone that could set it up for them.
Yeah, the challenge is in smaller schools and things, you may not have that person.
Get a college kid, give them some credit, or have them intern. I mean, these kids are pretty good nowadays. Have them do it, and they would love to be part of the athletic department.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the other questions I had for you is when we as coaches or sports professionals are working with the media, we've seen examples where they get it really, really wrong. And it becomes a very public thing, and it goes viral, and then it affects all kinds of stakeholders associated. Do you have any recommendations for coaches and those in sports into how to work with media professionals such as journalists to make sure that your message is sent across in a professional way?
No. You got to let them be who they are. Some are just going to be like that. I mean, you can't control the way people report. And when you try and control them, that really makes them mad. And you don't want to stir that thing. You don't want to stir that pot. Let them report what they want. Just be like, hey, he had that opinion. Here's how we saw it, and just always come out. And a lot of times when you avoid the media in crisis situation, let's say it is something true and a crisis comes out, the worst thing you can do is to hide and not comment. Because what ends up happening is, and I dealt with this with the Cowboys a lot, Dallas Cowboys, they don't hide from it. But sometimes the players I'm not talking about that. Well, what ends up happening is that story gets bigger and bigger. Why? Because now
you're not talking about it.
Yes, because now you're letting them regurgitate this story over and over and over and dissecting something because you're not talking. If you talk, then the story's over. Once you say something, then the story dies. Plus, When you're not talking and it goes 2, 3, 4, 5 days, now guess what? Getting that interview, man, that's a gold for a reporter. Now he's even trying harder to get you to say something because you'll be the first one to get that interview. So you're making it a bigger story because the reporter actually wants to get that story now more than ever.
So your recommendation then is, something happens, it's not something you really want to talk about it, get it out there
Get it
so
over
that
with.
it kind of finishes the news cycle and we carry
Yep.
on. Mm.
Yep.
What about in respect to athletes and coaches talking to the media? Do you find that certain personalities are better suited to being in front of the camera? For example, if I'm a coach and I have a group of 10 athletes and you as a reporter come in, hey, I need to talk to somebody about your game tonight. As a coach, should I be cautious about who I put in front, or do I provide them training?
Training.
How do I make sure that I navigate this in order to make sure that my team is put in a positive light?
Yeah, there are some people that shield the players. Well, that doesn't do them any good. You get these players are eventually going to have to learn how to be in front of people and deal with people in life, not just sports, after life and stuff. After athletics. So you can't shield these players so much and baby them. Teach them what to say. Teach them how to get out there. Have some coaching on what to do on camera, how to be on camera. But you got to let them. I mean, they got to grow up. Yeah, they got to grow up and learn how to be on this stuff.
Well, you talked about, providing coaching so that they learn how to be on camera. If you're providing that coaching, what kind of advice do you give for somebody who may be uncomfortable going in front of a camera?
That's a great question. I always tell people be authentic, be natural. Just speak your mind, but be careful speaking your mind sometimes. Don't don't say everything that comes in your mind, because always know whatever you say is going out to the public. So you have a perception, you have a brand that you want to protect as well. But I think over time you'll learn how to do it. You just got to learn how to do it, and how to learn how to do it is by being on. I was terrible the first time on camera, but you improve over time, and you just if you're never on, you're going to be nervous. You're not going to be natural. But once you do it a few times, I would probably do some reps, some practices,
Mm-hmm.
have film them which before they go on, train them, and then go back and look at what they did wrong. Then you can coach them better and say, hey, see what you did here. You paused too much, or you did this, or you did that. So I would do some practice runs first.
It's a great point. I think we do it a lot in sports, right? Where we practice something and we look at our technique. We
Yep.
need to
You
do
look
the
at the
same
tape.
when it comes to being on camera.
That's what I would do. I would do some practice runs.
Now, looking at kind of building a brand, a lot of us are trying to, promote what we're trying to do. It's one of the reasons why I'm talking to you, because we want FSU Coach to be known by more people.
Right.
Do you have any kind of ideas of how to build that brand? Are there particular social media platforms that are more effective or visible than others? Or is it a case of, you know what, you need to be on LinkedIn, you need to be on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of them? Or can we select, as opposed to now I've got to post on 5 or 6 different things?
I don't focus on the platforms as much as I do the content. So if you're creating great content that's relevant, that people want to see, people want to hear, that's what you got to find. What are people interested in? Create that, put it. I put stuff everywhere. I mean, I even joined TikTok the other day, and I'm putting stuff on there because the kids are on there. And you don't have to do wacky music videos. I did an interview last year, and I decided to post it, and it's already within an hour got over 100 views. It was a kid that has 4 billion views on YouTube. He does esports. Preston Plays, and I put that on YouTube and TikTok and Twitter and Instagram. So creating content that people want. If you don't know what people want, your brand's not going to work anyway, because you don't know the content that people want. So learn what people want first. That's always the end user. What do you want to deliver them? And then your brand will grow. Don't worry about, how do I grow my brand? No, worry about how do I create great content. You create great content. Over time, it's going to be shared. Over time, you're going to get known. Your brand will grow.
Can you give some examples of, you talked about the stories, right, and how important they are. Can you give some examples in the course of your experiences working with coaches and athletes of stories that have resonated, that have really, transformed your career, but also been effective for the coach and athlete?
Yeah. Once again, I always go back to stories where they overcome a tragedy, or they dealt with a hard life and made it. Those are always great stories. The human interest stories that an athlete had to overcome something. Those are great stories. Then ones of just athletes giving back is a good one. I'll tell you an interesting one I did. My favorite story probably that I've ever done, and he's just a personality, is Dennis Rodman. And everybody knows Dennis Rodman as the crazy player, but I dug deeper into the story and found something out that nobody really knew, that when he was in college, he lived with a white family that was farmers. Dennis Rodman lived on a farm and would help them on tractors, on all this stuff. And we told the story, and I interviewed him, and he's like, yeah, people only see my celebrity lifestyle, dating Madonna and all this stuff. But they didn't realize back then I was a grunt in college basketball and living on a farm and doing it. Was a really cool story. And I interviewed the family, and they're like, yeah, Dennis was very shy, very helpful around the house. And so finding stories that people don't know, I think are some of the best stories out there.
What about funny stories, comedy, or sometimes I see coaches who will get out there and do some ridiculous things in order to attract people to come to the game this weekend and things. Is that something you also recommend?
If it's your personality, yes. If it's not, I wouldn't do it.
That's a good
Mike
point.
Leach, that's his personality. He does crazy, funny stuff. He talks about pirates.
Right.
And that works for him. Someone that's a straightforward type coach, it's not going to work. But Mac Brown was a good example. When he was at Texas, he was very straight laced. He just didn't joke around. And then Vince Young got there, and they won a national championship, and he loosened up. He would dance with the players, so his personality was showing more, and he loosened up. But that became him. Don't play out of your element. Just be who you are. If you like to do wacky, funny stuff, then be that. If you're more straight, then be straight. You don't need to do funny, crazy stuff. It's who you are. Don't force it.
Yeah, it's a good point. The last question, you kind of touched on this a little bit, is just from a coaching perspective, what advice do you have for coaches who maybe aren't comfortable with the media, don't have that experience? A lot of them don't. A lot of them, maybe it's an interview here or there with an audio recorder, and now suddenly they find themselves in some kind of coaching position at college, for example, where they're in front of cameras. They don't have the experience. They haven't had the practice. What advice would you give them other than, just being yourself to help them navigate the trickiness of journalism? And let's face it, it can be complicated, right? Journalists can find holes, they can dig, they can look for things even when there may not be anything there.
Absolutely. I go back to what we said with the athletes. Get the coaches trained up, get them practicing. I'd get someone with a journalism background or something, and do some fake mock press conferences and have them, and then go over the video over and over and see, hey, here's coach, you probably wouldn't say that, or here's what, until they learn or until they get reps, they're going to get better. But that's the only way to get better, is through repetition on video.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. If somebody
Absolutely.
does have questions, how can they get in touch with you?
They can shoot me an email, yateshuddle@gmail.com.
I think we've got it there. So take a screenshot or pause your video and you can get that. Again, thanks for joining me. I do want to point out that we also have more guests scheduled next week. So joining us on Monday is Heath Esslinger. He's with A Better Way of Athletics. He's going to talk about his experience coaching. And also, all through the week, we have guests. Following that is Franklin Buster Hagenbeck, the Lieutenant General from the U.S. Army. He was an assistant coach for Bobby Bowden. Dr. Peter McGahey, is a head coach of women's soccer at St. Leo University. He'll be here on Wednesday. On Thursday, Al Light, head coach at Cirque du Soleil, different type of coaching. Looking forward to that one. And we round out the week with Jennifer Hyde, who's the head coach of women's tennis at Florida State University. So my thanks to Chris Yates. I really appreciate your content and input. And until next time, thanks so much for watching.
All right, Tim. Thank you.